Ordinance 771, amending Chapter 3 of the Municipal Code of Ordinances pertaining to animals. So basically, the way it'll flow is we'll ask the commission to speak first. If you have any concerns or questions, then we'll move on and we'll open up the public meeting. We'll allow anybody from the public to respond or to answer. Prior to the public getting involved, we have a special guest here today. Lydia, I'd like you to speak up and give your presentation before we start. I think it might foster some more thought and conversation, but I'll call you up when we're ready, okay?
Okay, perfect.
All right, thank you so much. All right, if you had a chance to approve look at the agenda, and if you have, I'll make a motion to approve it.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second that.
Motion second for the agenda for the special workshop.
Honorable Destiny Mitchell.
Aye.
Honorable Mary Jo Fall.
Aye.
Honorable Ingo Hopner.
Aye.
Honorable Ralph.
All right, we'll move on to item C1, workshop regarding ordinance 771. A, staff overview and commission comments. Does someone from the staff want to speak first, or should we go to commission comments?
Thank you. Yeah, I'll speak just briefly, again, just to kind of lay out the foundation that we think we're operating under. Under normal circumstances, an ordinance would be published for 15 days before consideration and voted. In this case, we published this for 60 days. Our intent was to receive as much public feedback as we could to give the process as much light as we possibly can. Want to really give Tyler a lot of credit. This is a program he's worked on. We felt that we wanted to let that kind of come before you and then take your comments and changes and then those from the public. So what we would say is after tonight, we'll go back, we'll take feedback, we'll begin to draft and create what we think is the final draft. If the final draft is still within inside the 60-day window and would be able to take action, that could happen as early as November, right? Mm-hmm. Correct. If we feel like we want to just finish the draft and then republish for a new 15-day window, then potentially we would do that in November, republish it, and then take action in December. So we're certainly not looking for a quick action on this. And again, we're looking for as much feedback. So I'm going to allow Tyler to talk about that ordinance. He's made some changes and recommendations as he's received feedback, and then we would just begin to take comments. So that's our presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioners. So I just want to reiterate the reason that we have even looked at revising our Chapter 3 is legal loopholes, legal gray areas that we were running into. Definitions weren't quite up to par with what the courts needed to prosecute cases. There was just a lot of issues that we were running into with something being too vague or something being too ambiguous and things like that. Other changes that have been made are changes to the penalties. We've adjusted penalties to be a little bit more considerate of situations, right? At the end of the day, we don't want to criminalize people for dogs getting out, things happen. We have kept some of the same penalties for animal cruelty. We want to make sure that those are a little bit more stiff. Animal cruelty, personally, for me, I've enforced a lot of really bad animal cruelty cases, and I don't really have a lot of room for animal cruelty. But other things like, nuisances, things like that people can work on and come together on. I've adjusted the penalty to $25 to $200 maximum at the court's discretion with some certain things. Ms. Bankridge from Best Friends Animal Society has also brought to my attention there was some situations in there that were interfering with judicial independence, where it said that a fine couldn't be taken under advisement by the court and it had to be issued by the court. There was no suspensions, deferrals, anything like that, and that interfered with judicial independence. So those sections have been removed to allow the judge to have that discretion. Other things that have been brought to my attention that aren't in the packet are community CAP programs. I think Ms. Bankridge is going to be presenting some things on that, but I'd like to also bring that to the table, that I'd like to foster a discussion on that, as well as a few other things, like the microchipping becoming the permanent animal licensing. That's the intent for that, is to help save people money by having a one-time annual fee for a microchip versus a $5 be annually, just a one-time payment of whatever your microchip company that you choose is. I would also like to point out that there are some markups on the side that reference specific county ordinances from Santa Fe, things like that. That's not saying that we took from those specific entities. That's just saying that's where the idea for that specific section came from. Or any adjustments that were made, that's where we got that idea from. It wasn't just oh, I think this is a good idea. We looked at other surrounding areas and said that, this is what they're doing. So let's see what we can do to adjust that and tailor it to our community. Again, this is supposed to be community oriented. This is supposed to be oriented for the people that have dealt with it the most, the clerk's office, the animal shelter, and the ones enforcing it at the police department. This has been very collaborative so far with those three entities, and we'd like to continue to keep it collaborative with the community, you guys, and foster discussions about it. I've had a few questions that have been brought to me, and I'm hoping that people have brought those questions up to me are present. And I'd also like to thank anyone present that has any questions, comments, or concerns for coming to voice those questions, comments, and concerns, because ultimately that's what's going to help us adjust this ordinance to what the community wants, and that's the ultimate goal. Again, our ultimate goal is always compliance, and I think if we have community input on an ordinance, then that's how we're going to get that compliance.
Great. Thank you, Tyler. Of course. So this thing is being recorded today, and we'll provide minutes of all the conversation and your comments. I also want to open it up. So where should the public send comments to? If someone wants to write out a comment or a suggestion, where should they send that to?
So I mean, I'm the one working on it along with the animal shelter and the clerk's office. I would direct those questions to one of the three entities, because we're the main, three entities working on it. But I'm hoping that they feel free enough to open up the discussion with you guys, and that way you guys can forward any questions or comments and concerns to us as well.
Obviously, we can take the questions, but if somebody wants to send it to the city, for instance, attention Tyler Null, would that work?
That would work. Exactly.
Okay. All right. Okay.
And I would think, Mayor, just it's always proper to address the clerk, right? The clerk is always the keeper of the public record. So any comments that need to come safely could be sent to the clerk in Tyler's name and your name. Be addressed there.
Perfect. And the comment period is open for a total of 60 days?
Correct.
And when did that start?
This is, what month is this?
August.
August, okay.
We started in August.
We're about 30 days in.
We're about halfway. So we've
Still got plenty of time. Okay. I like your idea of having the 60 days to add the comments, make the changes, and then go back out from there 15 days, because I think the public has a right to see the changes that we made before we go to final publication. So I think that was a good idea.
Thank you. I think the public would enjoy seeing it without the lines, right? Tyler did a good job breaking it apart, telling you where he moved it. And then, so I think having that final draft that's in its final form would allow one more good set of eyes. So.
Okay, perfect. Are you ready for the presentation for Ms. Dan Cabbage? Okay, so we have a special guest here today. She's a senior legislative attorney for the Best Friends Animal Society, Leedy Van Cabbage. So it's always nice to have a person that cares about animals here talking to us and helping to educate us. I think it's really important. And I want you to speak first, because I think whatever you say to us might change some of our minds and also might prompt some more discussion. So I'm glad that you're here. Generally, we only allow 5 minutes for presentation, but we're going to extend that just a little bit for you, because I know that you spent a lot of time putting this together. But for the rest of the folks, if we can try to keep it under 5 minutes, we won't actually time it. I think most folks will get through a lot quicker than that, but if it starts getting excessively long, we'll let you know, okay?
And Mayor, I promise to speak fast.
Yes. Right. Thank you very much.
Most attorneys do anyway.
All right.
Anyway, I want to thank you for being so collaborative. I really appreciate working with Tyler and Tara and Angela. I have not worked with a better city clerk. She is on everything and gets the information right away. And again, the city manager is wonderful. So again, you've got a great staff. And, I do want to celebrate the wonderful news that Tara got $40,000 for spays and neuters here. So that can make a huge difference, especially, like trying to get more animals sterilized. So that is really, really amazing. And I've been in this for a long time. I've been with Best Friends for 16 years. I was with the ASPCA for 9 years before that. And I started a Humane Society in the 80s. So that's why I'm senior attorney, is because I'm old. Okay, so let's see if I can get this to work. Where do I point it? Do I have to turn it on or something? Like, not, I'm sorry, wait. Is it, okay. Hold it. Here. There it is.
Well, Kathy could go ahead and go through.
Just do it. Okay. So just for, so you know, yeah, if you would change that, that would be great. So the stats in New Mexico, 60% of households care for animals. So New Mexico is a humane community, but unfortunately, New Mexico is killing more cats and dogs per capita than any other state in the nation. So we can do better with things like spay neuter programs. So that's what, we're trying to focus on. And 25% of pets entering shelters are surrendered from their families. A lot of the times it's landlord issues. A lot of times they can't afford pet food or vet care. So again, anything you can do, from a community sort of stance to help with pet food pantries, those things really do help. Please, yeah, next one. Sorry. I'll try the light. So best friends, we love you guys. I mean, we collaborate with you. We gave you a medical grant. We do, $5,000 for adoption stipend. We had 2 charter flights with 80 animals transporting to best friends in Canada, Utah to get them adopted. And we have funded 3 TRC partners to pull more dogs back from you. I don't know if they're doing that. I tried to get the numbers before this, but I wasn't able to. So next slide. And trends in sheltering. I just gave a presentation to the International Municipal Lawyers Association with Scott Trabowski of Hillsborough County, Florida. And he said that it costs $500 for them to bring an animal into the shelter. But if he can get them returned in the field, it's $100. So basically he tries to get all his folks, his officers to do kind of community policing, to basically try to find where the animal is and return it if it's not a repeat offender. Basically being very compassionate and defining public nuisance versus private concerns. Scott will not send his guys out unless there are 2 unrelated households complaining in the neighborhood. Because as I was talking to Tyler, evidently there are some neighborhood cranks that might live in your community who complain about everything and call every day. So again, before you send personnel out, make sure that it is a public concern where 2 people are complaining or the person is willing to go to court to back it up. That should be an issue. So I love this cartoon, beware of dog, beware of jerk with masculinity issues, because a lot of times it's not the dog. So, you try to figure out what the actual problem is. Is it poverty? Can they not afford to fix the hole in their fence? Lack of education, lack of low-cost vet care. But that now you have money for spays and neuters, which is exciting. Lack of pet-inclusive housing, are reckless owners. The International Municipal Lawyers Association does have a model ordinance targeting reckless owners. Whereas if they keep violating, they are not allowed to own a dog in the city for, X number of years. So I did bring a copy of that with me if you're interested. But again, the punitive approach won't solve every problem. Okay, so cats are different than dogs. And, cats can go in and out. They can become feral and then they can become, community cats, and then they can become pets. So they are totally different than dogs. And what we would like to see is, basically something different in your community. Next slide. So basically, community cat programs. These are common sense, cost-effective solutions for controlling free roaming cats, by preventing additional births instead of trying to house, feed, adopt, or kill more cats. So again, it's cost-effective. And taxpayers deserve a program that's animal-friendly, more cost-effective, and that reduces the burdensome bureaucracy placed on animal control. Because why bring, a healthy cat in if it's healthy, somebody's feeding it, and a lot of people love these animals. So, get it sterilized, get it vaccinated for rabies, get it ear tipped, and put it back out. This seems to work. Otero County just adopted a community cat ordinance. So I helped their county attorney with it. So, Hurley is in the process, probably at the next meeting, they are going to, I presented to them. So we're saying Albuquerque doesn't bring in healthy community cats. They do trap, neuter, return. So again, it does seem to work. And, so basically it can be more cost effective than bringing the animals in. It's cheaper, and with, we have the federal government cutting out a lot of money for cities lately. It's good to try to save money where you can. You can go to the next slide. Community cat goals, they're protect the human population from any preventable impacts from community cats and increase the number of cats vaccinated for rabies, stabilize and reduce the community cat population, provide health benefits to community cats for longer, healthier lives, reduce the strain community cats may place on municipal resources, and less cats equal less wildlife impacted. So again, birth control works, we know that, so it's just common sense. And especially when now you have money, to do it, which is, manna from heaven. So what cats do not meet criteria for community cats? They can't be declawed, they have to be healthy, and they can't have, they can't be owned. So they can't have a microchip, collar tag, whatever. Okay. So the basics, cats without identifiable owners are trapped, they're sterilized, vaccinated for rabies. They can be microchipped, which is a great idea. I think Tyler's idea of moving from tags to microchipping is a great one, because microchips are permanent and the officers in the field can just scan the animals and then take them back for the first time. They're permanent. It's, they're wonderful things. Albuquerque got rid of their licensing and just went to microchips. So basically, who can be involved? This is the fun part, is because it doesn't have to be the shelter involved or code enforcement. It can be individuals who care about the cats. So individuals who care about the cats can trap them, take them to the vet if they're, maybe there might be funding to help with that, get them sterilized, and then put them back out. And again, we're talking about returning the cats to where they live, where they're healthy, where their food source is, not just putting them out in a dump someplace and dumping them. So again, this can save money. And national support, the National Animal Care and Control Association believes that indiscriminately picking up or admission of healthy free roaming cats, regardless of temperament, for any purpose other than trap, neuter, return, fails to serve commonly held goals of community animal management and protection programs, and as such is a misuse of time and public funds and should be avoided. Okay, so next, the American Bar Association also passed a resolution urging all local governments to adopt uniform laws and policies that allow the implementation and administration of TNR programs. And if your attorney wants, I can get you that resolution if you want to see it.
That would be helpful.
Yeah,
Please
yeah,
do
it's
that.
a really good resolution. It's about
Please,
like 30.
please.
Yeah. So conflict mitigation. People are worried about nuisance complaints with the cats, but we found that nuisance complaints go down with trap, neuter, and return programs, because the cats aren't fighting, because they're looking for, fighting over, love, basically, or, and they stop spraying. So basically the nuisance complaints go down. And actually, there is training to help keep cats out of somebody's yard. There's plenty of things on YouTube, and Best Friends would be more than willing to get the city some tools for people to borrow to do that, if that was of interest. So anyway, that's that. I tried to stay within 5 minutes. I probably didn't. But I've got some other suggestions for Tyler that I do think trying to figure out a public versus a private nuisance, before you send your officers out would be good. I think microchipping, instead of licensing would be good. And again, you've had cat licensing, I don't know for how many years, and it ain't working. Angela got me the stats, and she's only sold 3 cat tags this entire year. And it's September, 3. And I saw like 2 cats as I was driving in here, and neither of them had a tag. So clearly, if something's not working, you should, do something different, and the microchip might be a way to go. So anyway, that's my spiel.
Thank you, Leedy. As we continue with our public discussion, Leedy, if you find that there's an opportunity for you to answer a question or something like that, would you mind just raising your hand so you can chime in?
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much. All right, as we get started, let's start out with our commissioners. Do we have any comments?
I'm going to defer to Mary Jo.
I saw your list.
I actually came up with 4 pages of comments. As those of you who know me know I like to critique things. I would say most of the items I put in there, I have concerns about, and the probably were already in the animal ordinance. But I think some of them are very restrictive and they're overburdensome to our residents, as in the licensing. I bet 70% of our residents don't do that. Part of it is because there's a fee. I think a lot of things that we have in here, we're charging them for. If we're charging them for that, I, as a resident, I'm like, well, okay, that just goes in your general fund. What good is that? That's just another way for the city to make money. If we are saying that's to help with animal control in the shelter, then perhaps the city should create a income line item for all of those fees, because then we can directly show the public, like when they get their kennel fee or their multi-use fee or whatever fee, that it's going to actually benefit the animals, then they won't be so reluctant to pay that, or they'll see a direct benefit. So this, I'm paying for that, but it helps that purpose. Can we do something like that?
So on the finance side, and maybe Gary could clarify on that, but I do know that when they do have the animal licenses or like the kennel permits or anything, it does go into a specific line item. I'm not sure if that does go into the general fund or how that works on the other side of the budget, but it does have a specific line item. It's not like just a miscellaneous fund that it goes into.
Yeah, just throw it to the pot. I think if we can show the public that it really is going to benefit that, other than, oh, well, that's just the kitty fund that we put it in. I mean, we need to justify those expenses and what we're doing with them. Some, like I said, some of the requirements in there, I think, are burdensome, and for shelters, the wording is so specific that probably 80% of the community don't do that. Like how the shelter needs to be. I have 2 dogs. They're mostly inside dogs. They go outside. I don't have a little specific structure, because when it rains, I bring them in the house. But probably most of our citizens are like that. And so, but we're going to find them so that if they don't have that outside in their yard, then they're already out of compliance. So, you know, most of our residents are out of compliance and they could be fined. And I think that we don't educate them enough, but also some of those things are, I know the purpose, but they could create finance hardships, or maybe they can't build that. So then they're just going to turn their animals in. I think some of it is just, as I said, very burdensome and expensive. And as we all know, we're in a low income, primarily community, and how can they afford to pay for those things?
Well, the shelter can be your house.
But it doesn't say that.
Yeah, so it does say that. So it actually does state
It
that if
says
the
the
animal.
shelter has to be non-toxic and all kinds of stuff. It
That-
doesn't say it
that-
can be your house.
I can definitely add that provision.
Those are specific little things that are misleading.
Now, our code doesn't specifically state that, but we allow that. People, you know, some dogs just like to be out in the sun. My dog, personally, I know my dog likes to hang out in the sun. We don't have a specific dog house for her. She's an inside outside dog.
Right.
And so we do try to tell people, you know, as long as your dog's going in and out, it doesn't necessarily need to have a dog. But if it's consistently outside, you need to have some.
Right. Then you find there, state that.
And I've seen that.
I think that would be,
For instance, I have a pet door at my house. My dog can go in and out whenever she wants. So the shelter is the house.
but since it doesn't allude to that, when I was reading that, I didn't get that from that language.
And
I
I
thought, oh, I
think
need
it
to go build a specific structure for my dogs and I don't have that. And so as a commissioner, I'm already out of compliance. Well, then that doesn't look good. So,
Okay.
so I just think things like that
And I think I would defer that to Attorney Rubin. Do you believe the way that the code is written should include that? And I mean, I'll still add it if that's what everybody thinks, but do you think it's too specific where it doesn't allow that, specifically?
What, your question, do I think it's too specific in our code or?
Right, so at least pertaining to shelter for animals, do you think it's too specific where it doesn't say we can have animals go inside?
You know, it might not hurt to maybe put a provision in
Yeah,
there to be on the safe side.
as far as other things, just to kind of help settle concerns with things, and you know this as well, we almost never cite on a first offense unless it's pretty egregious, and then at that point, it's still up to the court to determine what the proper route to take from there is. 90% of the time, we come up with a resolution outside of trial,
Right.
and it just goes in front of the court to tell the judge, hey, Your Honor, this is what we've decided to do to fix the situation for the future, and then that way it's just on the record and things like that. We almost never cite for a first offense, and there's usually a fourth or fifth time when we finally do decide to cite, just because we do want to give people the benefit of the doubt. At the end of the day, things do happen. Maybe there's some financial hardships, and we do try to work with people, and we do try to let people know that there are resources out there to get some stuff done. And we tell people it doesn't need to be the most fancy thing, but you do need to make sure that the animal's taken care of, and that's our most important goal. So even if we can see someone's trying and it doesn't specifically state, we'll give some time to work on it. Just with anything that we do.
However, you could, because it said they will. And so again, we're putting financial burdens on people that having them chipped. I think that's great. I think my dogs are chipped, but I'm not sure. But then we're making them all do that. Well, if we have a grant for do that, but what happens when we don't? Then again, they're all out of compliance. So some of those maybe should say should, we prefer, or whatever, but saying you will then could create hardships down the road. And so as I'm not going to read all 4 of my pages, but I did want to reiterate what we had said when we brought it back to us earlier, Tyler, was about livestock running at large. As this community was founded based on agriculture and mining, and we don't want to forget that. Yes, we have permittees that are right across the river. We're punishing them for their livestock crossing the river when there's rivers down. And it's, as you said, it was already in the ordinance, which I didn't know. I adamantly will say we should not force that on the permittees, or as you said, they could come from Doñana County and come up here. Those are livestock and therefore a particular purpose. That's not the same thing as somebody having it as a pet. People have goats. They have those little miniature pigs. They have, even in the residents of like my rodeo arena around, they can have horses. Now, to me, having a pet livestock running at large is different than somebody raising livestock for a living. I think that if we could just add in that section where it says it is unlawful for owners of livestock to allow animals running at large, etc. If we inserted it is unlawful for the owners of livestock who reside within city limits to do that, because when you really look about livestock and pets, that is their pet. They're not raising it for beef cattle. They're not raising it for selling. They're raising it because it's their little pet horse. It's their pet dog, their sheep, whatever it is. That shouldn't be in the same category as the Hopkins running their cows across the river. We should look at those separately. So if we say it's the resident, your resident in town, yeah, then you're going to be in trouble. But as long as we, well, I'll tell you, the agriculture community will have uproar, and I'm going to adamantly vote against this as loud as I can if we leave it the way it's worded.
Let's keep moving. We can't stay on 1.0.
Okay, that's all. You need to shut up. There we go. You said it. But anyway, I provided those in written form, and I sent it to Gary because I could send it. So you'll be able to look at it later. Okay, that's all I'll say.
Take a turn.
No.
Go ahead. What's the cost of a microchip?
So it really depends on the company. I would,
I was gonna say, if you buy them in bulk, you can get them for around $5 or $6.
And then who can, and you would administer them at the, can, versus the city clerk administer a microchip, or does it have to go to the shelter?
so currently the animal shelter, a veterinarian's office, you can take your animal to Las Cruces. In this provision, it would allow you to take your animal anywhere, get any microchip company that you prefer, at least for the microchipping requirements. You can get any microchip from anyone qualified to give the microchip. That way people can, wait for maybe a free microchip day somewhere and go get one. The only reason that there's even a microchip requirement there is because, like Commissioner Fall had brought up, licensing dog tags, sometimes dog tags slip off, things like that. Our ultimate goal is to return an animal home. So if we can scan a permanent identification, and get that animal home, then that's our ultimate goal. And that saves room at the animal shelter, that saves us money, that saves us resources.
Would you consider microchipping an animal versus getting a license?
I
Would that be
would,
the same thing?
I would, the hope that I'm going for is that we replace our current animal licensing process with a microchipping permanent license. That way someone can go in
Right,
and get a permanent license anywhere they want and
That's
then
perfect.
just register it with the clerk's office.
okay, that's just my question.
Mayor, can I just say, a lot of cities do have low-cost microchip days, where they, have a vet come and just do, like anybody who comes. And they'll charge like $15 for them.
All right, as if for a permanent license, instead of having to license a dog once a year, which is $5, right? But you have to do it every year.
5 or 50, depending on if they're spayed or neutered. If they're spayed or neutered, it's 5. If they're not, it's 50.
Should there be a differentiation between spay or neuter if they're microchip?
I don't think so.
Good comments. All right, any other comments, commissioners? Okay, at this point, I'll open it up to the public. I only have one person signed up, but I'm not going to really worry about signups. If you want to come up and speak, raise your hand. I will call you up to the podium. Ms. Sloan, you had your hand up first.
To some people who are very involved with the Sierra County Fair, and they couldn't be here because this is delivery day for animals. So I think you're missing out on a lot of population that care about animals because they're involved with the fair. So this, if you had a second town hall, I think it might be better attended, and it takes a while for it to, percolate down into the community, what's going on. And the major thing I had was on page 48. It said, visit a premises by animal control and designated zoning official or administrator. I don't know what that means. Is designated zoning official Tracy Alvarez currently? And administrator. So you got to have an animal control officer, or you got to have Tracy Alvarez and an administrator, or an administrator. I think that's so vague that the public should be able to know who's responsible and who's accountable for enforcing that part of the law. So, I mean, I think it should just be the animal control officer because they're the ones with the training to assess the situation. And that phrase was also on page 51 twice. And 51, my notes are bad, so I don't know what the first reference was for, but it was the same thing, animal control officer and designated zoning official or administrator. And then the second reference on page 51 is for inspecting kennels during normal business hours, and it was the same thing. And so I would like that phrase cleaned up. and made more specific.
Mayor, if I could comment,
Yes,
just
yes,
to
sir.
make sure that we're all on the same page. It would appear that all of those are also requirements that have to come before planning and zoning as well. So I think that would be the connection, if they are for kennel permits. So to get a kennel permit, you have to come to planning and zoning. Planning and zoning has an action to take as well. And we've talked, again, I don't know where it's at, we'll get into the weeds, but we've asked that potentially as we think about new kennel permits, that we designate, we identify clearly the number of square footage that would be available per animal, so it doesn't become a guess, but that would require, again, a team effort. So that may be the reason. We could look at the language, but all those would be revolving around the planning and zoning having a responsibility. So if we're going to take that off of planning and zoning, which may or may not be necessary, then it could be just the animal control officer. But if it still requires the planning and zoning board to take action, then an official would have to go to be able to present to them as well.
So this part of the code is for the in-field work. This is for who goes out into the field to inspect a kennel.
Correct. I'm looking at page 48, and item 48, the item B is for kennel permits, and then it talks about on-site visits would be the animal control and designated zoning official or an administrator. Correct. So that would be because that requires both to take action
In the field.
in the field, right? So
Okay.
If I could also add to that, currently we have code enforcement, which is myself, and a person designated as animal control, which is another code enforcement officer going to perform the inspection. That way we have one person looking for specific animal violations and another person looking for specific code enforcement violations, overgrown weeds, trash like that. We believe that our kennel permits, multi-animal site permits, and special use permits are held to a higher standard. So we make sure that the premises is clean and sanitary, not only in an animal control sense, but in a property sense as well.
So in any case, you need two people in the field. All right. Maybe clarifying that. So the public isn't wondering who's responsible at the city. And the other thing I've already discussed with Mr. Null is, and it's already been discussed by Leda, that, softening the ordinance so that people who are feeding strays and also fixing them, I have a deal with my next door neighbor, and you've got to feed them to make friends with them, to trap them and take them in or to touch them, so we're doing that, but we're out of compliance, and it's to encourage that versus to discourage that, because the way the ordinance is written, you're discouraging people from doing that. So I'd like it changed. Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
All right, any other public comments?
Let me get up here. No, I'm getting too old.
Buddy, can you state your name before you start?
Can I say my name?
Can you state your name?
Because then everybody knows, right? Stand up. My name is Buddy Montoya. I am a life resident of TRC. Actually, I lived in the county for many, many years. When I returned to Truth Consequences 30 years ago, I made my residence here in town. So I'm kind of, I'm one of your ones that's pain in the butt to the law enforcement, animal control. I've made many complaints. I do want to speak about the microchip. I have had some issues with that. I've never had the microchips before, but about just not quite 2 years ago, I got a little Chihuahua, and I decided since she was so small, I wanted to make sure that she was microchipped. So I did take her out to the animal clinic out in Williamsburg, and had her fixed. And at the same time, I also had her chipped. Well, not too long ago, I'd say about 3 or 4 months ago, when I took her in for her nails to be clipped here at the city,
I asked them to check her chip to make sure it was working. Okay, I found out it's not working. So I went back and I talked to Maggie out of Williamsburg. That was about 3 months ago. She told me she would get on this and she would find out. I have yet to hear from anybody about this. So the microchip that she had put in at the time is not working. I was told, well, maybe it didn't get registered. So I contacted the company. Okay, now here's where my problem is. And I'm kind of concerned about that is they get microchipped. And so if we have to pay for a microchip and it don't work, what I was told by, I think it was Home Again, I think it's the name of it, Home Again. They said that it was probably a bad chip. Okay, so you're getting bad chips, and now I'm going to have to pay to have her rechipped, which I don't want to put her through. So I'm just kind of against that chipping because you're going to have problems with the chips. Home Again did tell me that there is a lot of times that they get complaints that the chips go bad. They're not supposed to, but some do. So that's going to be a cost back on me. And it's also going to have to be where I'm going to have to take my dog back in to have this done again to her. And I don't want to put her through that. Now, another thing that I have is some of us have what I call yard dogs. You guys know what I mean whenever you're out in the county, okay? You have dogs out in the county. You have them in their pens and all stuff. They're kind of wild. They take care of your yard. Well, the one dog that I have, he's a German Shepherd. Now, of course, he's in at night. I do take him in to get rabies shots, but the problem is I don't know how we're going to get him in to get a chip done. It's hard enough for them to go out and do a shot. They do help me out on that they go out and give him his shots out in the truck because he's one that I can't really get him to go inside a building like that other than going into the house. So that's going to be a problem. Is some of the dogs in town, if they're the yard dogs where they're not used to going into buildings or on leashes and all this stuff, it's kind of hard to get them into stuff like that. So I'm not real sure. I may be wrong on that. I'm not real sure. So that's my concern is the microchip it's not working and you'd have to continue getting it redone. So that's one thing that I'm kind of against. Now I want to echo Mr. Fall on livestock. I've listened to that quite a bit. I guess I'm one of the nosy neighbors. I've heard them contact about the livestock before, and I'm kind of against the way that they're doing. I've known the Hopkins for many, many, many years. They've had their cattle roaming for many years, way back whenever I was a kid, and that was many years ago. There is a free roam for cattle. And another thing that I kind of get is why is animal control dealing with these cattle? That is livestock. Whenever the cattle are out, livestock should be called. And I understand livestock is out. He lives out in the hatch or array area, but to say that you're going to cite somebody for a livestock and hearing and I guess I'm not complaining to law enforcement. I appreciate you guys doing what you do. But that is a livestock issue, not animal control. Okay. So, but we do appreciate you moving them out of the yards and all that stuff. I do appreciate that. And I think that was mainly what I wanted to talk about. I do want to say thank you. The other day, whenever I contacted you about the animal on my street, he did take care of that. The person, I wish there was more people like the person that he went and spoke with about the dog that's been roaming up and down. I wish there was more people in this town that once they go and talk to them and ask them to take care of the animals, this town would be perfect. But I want to thank him personally for taking care of that for me, okay? Because I have not seen that dog since you went and talked to him. Perfect. Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Lady,
Clarify some of that, please.
Sure, and you can do it in a car because I've got 2 pit bulls and they were microchipped in our car. and at the time they got the rabies shot. So a lot of times they'll combine the rabies vaccine clinics with a microchip clinic. And so it's a little bit bigger than a shot, but not that much. It's about the size of a lead of a pencil, so they could do it in the park. You know, again, I've had my guys chipped and a lot of cats chipped, and I haven't had a bad one yet. So again, you know, it's very sad that you had that experience.
My main thing was having to, you know, if it happens, it's your expense again, that you have to make that expense, and then you have to put it on again. And I understand the shots.
Yeah, okay.
But I understand. And one more thing, can I say one more thing?
Okay, come to the mic,
One
but
more thing real quick.
we only have 5 minutes now. Hurry.
The things, the scanners?
Yeah.
Would it be possible for me to meet up with you sometime that you go by and check the little dog to see if you can get it? Because they couldn't find it.
Yeah, and I'd like to also add, some companies do want you to register annually. As long as the number is showing up, that number is always going to be different. So that's why we said register it with the clerk's office as the form of licensing. That way, if that number is saved with the clerk's office, even if it's not registered with the company, we still have that number saved and we can still trace it back.
And Home
Thank you.
Alone says it's one time.
Right. So I suspect that you're called for livestock calls because you're animal control, but then you'll call the livestock inspector out, right? So a lot of times you're called, I know it's not your jurisdiction per se, but you'll call somebody else out.
So we do contact livestock. Livestock will not respond. I like to,
Okay.
livestock states that New Mexico is a fenced out state, and if
Right.
the municipal body has authority, or rule setting it, then that's our responsibility to enforce it. I'd like to point out that if we don't have any rules regarding it, we could allow livestock to roam wherever, and that could be liability, and that's
Sure.
why I believe we probably have that.
But I think where he's coming from is we do have people where livestock will go into their yard, that eats their gardens, that eats their trees, and then somebody needs to be held liable for it
And
because
livestock-
that's destroying somebody's property.
This is a fenced out state. So again, there's a difference between the Hopkins and the Smiths running cattle and the rivers down and they cross. That's the only time they cross. But if you have your pet livestock, that's a different situation because you're allowing, I mean, anyway.
Yeah, but you shouldn't allow it in somebody's property is what I
Then
think.
put up
where
a
they're-
fence. I think Amanda.
Well, we can discuss that further.
Right, you're not gonna solve that today.
I was just gonna touch on the same thing as far as microchipping in the vehicle. I was just gonna touch on the same thing as far as microchipping. We have drive-through clinics that we did back in May that we partnered up with Res Dog Rescue. From the sounds of it, they're gonna try to make it an annual thing. Drive in, they're in the car, they're microchipping, they're giving their shots and they're taking off. When Res Dog does it, they register it on the owner's behalf. The shelter has microchip readers as well. You want to bring them by the shelter, we can scan it that way to see if it's working. When we put a chip in at the shelter itself, sometimes, depending on the dog's fur, let's say you have a Chihuahua versus a Husky who's more fluffy, you don't know. So we give the shot, we check to make sure it's there, and we jiggle the fur a lot to see if it's gonna fall out because some dogs have thick skin, some dogs don't. So we jiggle everything around and we scan that chip at least 5 or 6 times to make sure that it's working. We have several microchip readers at our shelter, and I make sure that animal control has them as well. When their batteries are low, they come to the shelter, they get one of our spares and trade it out. So we make sure that they have microchip readers on their vehicles at all times that are working.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Yes,
Yes, ma'am.
Takes a while. Takes a few steps to. Okay, Esther Lucchini, I'm here on behalf or being a member of the planning and zoning committee. And these issues come up often and they're hard to make personally, they're hard to make a recommendation for either way. But I did have some questions. This is you guys have been working on this for a while, but so the number of animals per kennel is gonna depend on square footage of the property? Is that?
Mayor, members of the commission, again, our discussion since the last issue has come up would be to take a look at the accessory limits of a property potentially. Kind of say if that's what we're going to do. So we're trying to work through zoning as well, right? And thinking about how we connect them. So whatever the accessory size is, and then come up and say if you had a small dog, you would need 5 by 5, medium dog 7.5, something like that. That's just been our general conversation, so that when somebody makes a kennel application, they have to say, this is how much square foot I have available to build a kennel, and we're going to put this many, these dogs in it, and then that would tell us how many animals they would be allowed to then permit. That's what we're thinking the process is. Right now, the ordinance just says it's based on an assessment, right? We just have, Tyler basically has to say, I think you can have 6 or 7. So we think it needs to be just clear so that it's kind of black and white.
And
I
you're
think
gonna,
yes, with some work to be done in planning and zoning, not through the animal control ordinance.
and you're gonna provide those numbers to the planning and zoning, right? So if you get a permit, you're gonna go out and inspect and say this property is fit for this many animals and it can do this with these kennels or whatever, but you'll make that report to the planning and zoning so they can make an informed decision.
That is
that
correct,
correct?
and that's why we do have a code enforcement official inspecting as well with animal control officials.
Right now, it's just, you can have this many animals, correct?
Right, it's kind of a blanket, you know what, those dogs seem like they have enough room to
Right.
move around comfortably.
Okay, so to Gary's point, size wise, I don't think we were considering size or one of the members was concerned about the number of animals, but I don't know if we considered the size of
Yeah.
that. So that
I
would
think we
be,
would.
that would be a good thing. That's good.
That's our general concept and conversation would be that we would look at some factor, some formula that would say, you know, is it a 5 by 5? That's what it is. And then this is how much square footage, and that equals the number of dogs, right? That's
There's also a size regulation regarding the size of the animal.
correct.
So if it's a large dog, obviously it's gonna need more space. And that seems like it's been spelled out in the ordinance as well, so.
Yeah, so if you do look at page 32 of this proposed revision, it does have that kind of spelled out based on weight of the animal.
Okay, so I apologize. I haven't read the proposed or, so I don't know. I'm just clarifying. But on that topic, so it would, number of animals would be determined by the size of the area also?
Correct.
Yes, okay.
That's
How
correct.
about the length of time of the permit? It was a year before, wasn't it?
It's gonna stay the same way.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's gonna stay the same, okay.
What I'd like to propose is that we keep it to a year, but that it can be re-inspected every year, but it doesn't have to come before the commission every year. So for up to 3 years. So that's something I'd like to see in there.
And then eventually mess with the wording to ensure that, you know, we can inspect if changes are made or as needed, but it doesn't have to go to planning and zoning every single time, but the initial still will have to go to planning and zoning.
Okay. How about number of kennels permitted in the city? Because what if you have I live here and every owner around, every house around me wants to get a permit for a kennel. Could we limit the number of kennels in the city?
We don't have that current provision. I think that would be more of a planning and zoning. Planning.
Can you limit the number of cannabis shops in the city?
Yeah,
It may not be a
that's a
direct correlation.
That'd be
but-
hard to do legally, yeah.
Okay, that's an idea. And as far as fence out state, personally, that's the stupidest thing the state does. Because I mean, when you're taking an animal, whether it's your livestock for business or your poodle for a pet, you're responsible for that. Food, vaccine, shelter, permits, chipping, that's your responsibility, no matter how much money you make or don't make. What's your responsibility? Fence out state. And what just baffles me is some people with cattle, because I've had these issues out there. They keep their biggest thing is it's a fence out state, but if your cattle are in somebody's yard in town, don't you feel responsible for them? And don't you want to know that they're within your eyesight of where they should be? Who knows what's gonna happen to that cow in somebody's yard? And you are liable for it. So that's my opinion on fence out state or fence out. That's so.
That's certainly going to be an interesting issue once we get through that. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. When the river is up, you don't have cattle in
Right.
town, probably, but when the river goes down, I mean, those people are responsible for their cows. And when they come into my yard, it's really upsets me.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak? I'd like to make a general comment, and Lita, you tell me if I'm thinking right or not here. So first of all, I want to commend Tyler for putting this thing together. It's very comprehensive. It's got a lot of stuff in it. Some people are scared it's got too much in it. It's got too much power, that we can do too many things to the public. I kind of have a different view of that, and here's my view, and we'll kind of see if I'm going right with that. I like the idea there's all this stuff is covered, because a lot of times we're looking for things to deal with. What ordinance does that fit under? How do I deal with this particular animal? How do I take care of that? There should be an ordinance to cover that. Where it comes down to, for me, is the attitude of the officer and the way it's enforced. We don't have to enforce every infraction that's written in our codes. We go out and we talk to people, and a direct example is that speeding, for instance. Okay, we know that you can cite a person for going 1 mile an hour over the speed limit. Do we do that? No, we usually wait till it's 5, 6, maybe 10 miles an hour of speed limit, and then we make a stop, and then we have a conversation, and then we decide whether we're going to write a ticket or not. Sometimes we don't, sometimes we do. I kind of look at the enforcement of this of an animal control ordinance like this kind of the same way. You have an infraction, you have a conversation, you figure out what the issues are, you talk about the situation, and then you decide based upon the circumstances whether you're going to write a citation or not. Certainly, if you've given this person 2 or 3 breaks and it's time to write a citation, you're going to do that. So I would much rather have the ordinance written out and be available, but it comes down to how the chief interprets it and how he wants his officers to administer the citations or the ordinances and how to take care of it. But I think we have a very good track record in this community that it's community policing. We talk to folks. We take care of the worst case scenarios, those things the way we have to take care of things, but we work with the public. And I would look at that the same way in an ordinance like this. I'd rather have the bases covered and then have that conversation and be able to deal with the public in a good way and in a positive way, hopefully. Is that okay?
I agree, Mayor. I mean, it's all about community policing,
Right.
and again, giving them the authority to waive things, or help fix a fence, to keep a dog in. I mean,
Right.
people love that, instead of taking their dog away. I mean, it's just good for the community. And no, I think you're definitely on the right track.
Thank you. All right. Yes, sir.
Mayor, I would just conclude and say, support you in that. I think that the goal here is not to create a situation where we're driving around and knocking on everybody's door to check on their animals, right? We want everybody to have peaceful enjoyment of their animals. All of us, love that. More people probably take care of their animals, but we do need to give the police department and animal control the tools when those animals are being abused. That's the bottom line. If we come up in a situation that's bad, they need the right tools to be able to deal with it. And so I think having Tyler look at this has given it that fresh look. So we need to look at it, right? I had comments and made questions about the fees and those kind of things. I want to make sure that they're consistent with statutes and that they're not overburdensome again, right? If you can't pay to take care of the animal, you really can't afford to pay the fine. So we know that potentially could get deferred. We do still need to look for what's our best mechanism going forward for some type of enforcement, right? And those kind of things. I think that has to be talked about. I have to say I was not thinking about an innovative program like the CAT concept. I think that's really innovative, right? To think of another way other than just catch, bring them into the animal shelter and try to find a home. So I think, I would certainly welcome some more ongoing conversations on, how do we potentially change the ordinance to include something like that. And then the last piece would be, we still need some overview on the other items within the, this ordinance to make sure that we're not too restrictive, I think, on your point. So I look forward for some more comments. and I said it the last, but this will be the, as it relates to the cattle, right? One of the first problems I had when I came here was the cattle that seemed to roam Peter Street in the mud, and I think we do have a good permittee there that is proper, but I do think we do need to make sure our eyes are open to say, how do we legally help that permittee get those cattle out of people's yards? It is a problem. It may be a fence out state, but I do want you to open your thoughts on how we deal with it as a city. What can we do? We don't want to fine him, but we certainly need the right mechanism to have that, happen. Does it need to be timely? Do we, those kind of things where we just can't have somebody that say, well, it's a fence out state and I can't get there for a month. We do, it is an issue. So I don't want to get into the weeds. I know it can be contentious, but it is a real issue at that time for those residents in that area. So we need to find the best reasonable solution, right? And we're lucky, we do have a great permittee there that takes care of it. So, but it could be the other way at times too. So thank you for letting me have some comments.
Yes, thank you. All right, if there are,
Hold on one second. I was gonna suggest, Tyler, when Kathleen was talking about the Southern New Mexico Fair, you think it might be possible to have a booth at our county fair? So you could take comments. I mean, I think you wouldn't have to do it on the weekends. I think the fair will be open Thursday, Friday. So maybe you could have some copies there and you could get some feedback from people at the county fair. That might be a good opportunity to interact with people.
Yeah, I definitely do think that's a great idea. I honestly forgot it was county fair season, so.
I think it's
that's-
the first, second, and third. So it's next week. So
Yeah, that is something that, I wanted to get out to community events. If you guys, had noticed the last Dancing in the Streetlights, I was actually set up with ready for public comment and questions and things like that. And for this next one, I'm hoping to be there as well. And hopefully I can get set up for the county fair. That's something I'll definitely do.
cool.
okay,
What a great idea. Those are awesome.
I did have one comment and it was on the cows getting lost. And if there was a way that, we could have Tara put it up on the Facebook, found cow claimed within 3 days. Or we're gonna have a city barbecue. I think they would get there pretty fast.
we got microchip cows. Right, having no further public comment, any further commission comment? If not, then this meeting is now adjourned.